They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
Bob, there have been many that have been critical of this process, calling it a secret trial. Do you regret taking this to the grand jury? Do you wish there had been a coroner's jury, some other forum for presenting this evidence?
No, not at all. I certainly don't regret taking this. I think that was a good decision to take this to the grand jury. You know, we presented to this grand jury, as I detailed in here, all the evidence that there possibly could be, all of which will be available, as we finish this tonight. So everyone will be able to examine that same evidence and come to their own conclusion. And that's the only thing I'd urge. And I know people aren't going to go home and read everything that was on there and make a decision based on that. But you need to keep in mind that these grand jurors poured their hearts and souls into this process. You know, their term was scheduled to end in early September, and they gave up their lives. They put their lives on hold. They put their families on hold. They put everything on hold so that they could come in and do their civic duty. And it was a very emotional process for them. You know, no police officer or no young man should ever be killed by a police officer, and no police officer should ever be put in that position. And so that's why I keep urging people to keep this talk going. You know, so many times, and we've seen in the past where the discussion starts and then it fades away, and then we have the same issues, and we're back here again. I don't ever want to be back here. So we have to keep that discussion going, and everybody has to stay engaged in it. This is a horrible tragedy, and we don't want to see any repeat. So thank you.
After more than 100 days, a decision has been reached in the Michael Brown shooting case. The grand jury could not find probable cause that a crime had been committed by Officer Darren Wilson, so they returned a no true bill. Darren Wilson will not be indicted. Prosecutor Bob McCullough began with sympathies for the family of Michael Brown, and because the investigation might not be perceived as full and fair, McCullough decided the evidence in this case would be released in the name of transparency. All the evidence in this case was shared by federal and local authorities. All 12 jurors were present for every session. They met 25 times since August 20th. They heard 70 hours of testimony, heard 3 medical examiners, hundreds of photos. McCullough said they are the only people who heard from every witness and heard all the evidence.
And of course, he says his heart goes out to the Brown family, but all facts were presented to the grand jury, and this is what they decided. There was also a statement from the Brown family. They said that they were very disappointed. They went on to say that it is because the killer of their son, they do not feel like justice was served. So they are responding. We have not heard anything from Officer Darren Wilson yet or his camp, but we expect to soon.
And we are also going to hear from the President of the United States. We are expecting an announcement or some kind of speech from President Barack Obama coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, let's turn to St. Charles County Prosecutor Tim Lomar. Your reaction to what was said tonight?
Well, I think that the first thing that stands out to me is that Mr. McCullough appears to have gone above and beyond what would typically be expected, certainly be required of a prosecutor in his position. I think he took great lengths to make sure that the process was thorough as can be, extensively more thorough than any process I've seen before. And also, he took the extraordinary steps to say, I'm going to tell you everything the grand jury heard. So you know I wasn't pulling any punches. I wasn't guiding their decision. And I think that was the right way to do it. And I think that's about the only thing any reasonable prosecutor could have done in this situation.
And one thing he kept focusing on was the physical evidence. Even though we had witnesses that had varying stories all across the board, the physical evidence doesn't change its mind, isn't influenced, doesn't forget things. So he really kept pointing to that.
That's right. Physical evidence doesn't have a mind, it's not influenced by its friends or by the mood in the neighborhood. I think it's important to point out that that witnesses, as Mr. McCullough said, they can, in their opinion, truthfully testify to what they saw. As we all know, somebody's observations are influenced by many things. The physical evidence cannot be mistaken. And I think what the grand jury had to have done in this case is to have taken a look at all the statements, compared that to what they knew to be facts, which would be the physical evidence.
And now St. Louis Police, County Police, the Unified Command are actually moving towards some of these protesters with guns drawn. You cannot see that situation up close. We have this chopper shot. We do not want to put any of our reporters or photographers in harm's way, but we do understand that there is a confrontation right now in the protest that you're looking at between police and the protesters.
And we want to remind everyone that the Brown family has spoken out several times saying that they did believe an indictment was necessary. In their mind, an indictment meant justice. But despite whatever happened and whatever the announcement was, that everyone remained peaceful. And they did not want their son's death to be in vain. So they have been asking and begging for peace. Let's turn to Sue McGraw now from SLU, a professor of law and a grand jury expert. These grand jurors, what happens now? Even though we don't know who they are, we never will, do they have any protection when they go home, or they just go back to their normal lives?
Well, I'm not sure they can go back to their normal lives. One would hope that that's something that might happen eventually. I don't know whether or not they'll be provided protection. Their names and identifying information should remain Secret, yeah, it should. But I can't imagine, having had an experience like this, that normality would be easy to find.
And we have to lift them up and not deny them or try to tamp them down. What we need to do is to understand them and figure out how do we make more progress. And that can be done. That won't be done by throwing bottles. That won't be done by smashing car windows. That won't be done by using this as an excuse to vandalize property, and it certainly won't be done by hurting anybody.
I'm Brian Williams, NBC News, New York.
And as we continue to look at these live pictures on your screen here, this is right outside the Ferguson Police Department. It started with about 1,000 people gathering there. Then the St. Louis County Police said that people were looting on South Florissant, just down from that street. Then we had a St. Louis County patrol car was rocked. Someone bashed in the windows, including the back windshield, and now we see that there has been some kind of gas deploying. And Rick Watson, the sheriff from St. Clair County, joins us. You have a SWAT team. You have all of these vehicles. You use all these tactics. And just kind of give us an idea of the steps it took to get here and what they're using. What, is this gas? Is this smoke? Can you tell?
It looks like it's gas, and just to disperse the crowd. But you know, the one thing that, you know, we've got to get to right now is they are no longer protesters. Now they're criminals. This is criminal activity, and they need, you know, they're going to have to take care of it appropriately.
So give us an idea. We were hoping to avoid some of the situations that we had in August where the police had to actually draw their guns, had to fire the tear gas, had to move in the armored vehicles. When does it escalate to the point where that has to happen again?
Well, you see it here. I seen some of the cars being the windows bashed in. It looked like they were trying to actually tip the car over. Mm-hmm. You know, and at that point, they're no longer a peaceful protester, and they have to take care of it as a criminal activity.
All right. So if you're in command here, what are you telling your officers?
That's exactly what I'd be telling them. These are people that we need to take into custody.
And there's a level of the use of force. You don't just start with smoke and gas. I mean, right. Kind of explain that to people and how it works.
Well, what happens is, you know, if they're just peaceful protesters, we're just going to be out there standing, watching, making sure everything is going fine and nobody's getting hurt. But once it escalates to the point that they're firing guns, they're tearing up property, maybe there might be hurting people in the crowd here, you know, it's hard to see. That's when we have to step in and protect life, property.
All right, Sheriff, stick around. We are going to get back to you, but tonight, for the first time, we are hearing from Officer Darren Wilson.
He wrote a letter before tonight's decision and allowed one of his supporters to read it to us exclusively. News Channel 5's Stephanie Diffin joins us now with more on this letter. Stephanie.
Well, I just finished speaking with the Officer Wilson supporter who has been helping lead the effort. She says she is, quote, ecstatic but not surprised about tonight's decision. And tonight we are bringing you the letter that he allowed her to read exclusively. Here it is in its entirety.
I want to thank everyone for standing with us since August 9th. The following letter is from Darren Wilson to all of his supporters. This was given to me after our first rally and media address. Per Darren's wishes, this was kept from media until now. To all of the pro-Officer Wilson supporters, I would like to thank you all for standing up for me during this stressful time. Your support and dedication is amazing, and it is still hard to believe that all of these people that I have never met are doing so much for me. I watched the CNN video that was recorded at the rally on Saturday, and it brought tears to my eyes. All of you are simply amazing, and I don't know how to thank you all enough. I wish I could attend and meet you, hug you, and personally thank you for all of your continued support. However, due to my and my family's safety, I am unable to. Please don't give this letter to any media or post it where they can see it. Relay the message of thanks to all and keep this letter private until the investigation is complete. I want you all to know that I do get updates on the amount of support. Unfortunately, I don't get to see all of the comments made through social media, but overall messages are relayed to me. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and know that I would do the same for any of you. Also, please keep my family in blue in your hearts and prayers. They have all made a sacrifice to their own lives in order to work the excessive hours through the heat and rain to ensure that the riots and protests in Ferguson were as safe as they could be. Thank you, Police Officer Darren Wilson.
Now, the woman who just read you that letter sat down with me right after the decision was announced. She asked us to keep her identity anonymous. She says that she, along with all of the other Wilson supporters, has been in contact with, did not support him blindly. She says they looked at all of the facts that were released and made their decision based on those facts. She says that even though Officer Wilson was not charged, clearly his life has changed forever, both personally and professionally. You'll actually hear more from that interview coming up in just a bit. Ann.
Thank you, Stephanie. The family of Mike Brown just released a statement on the grand jury decision.
Let's go live now to News Channel 5's Christina Coleman at the command center in Jennings. She has that statement for us. Christina.
Well, that's right. Leslie McSpadden and Michael Brown Sr. have not done any interviews with the media this evening, but they did release this statement. And here it goes. The Brown family statement on the grand jury decision. It says, "We are profoundly disappointed that the killer of our child will not face the consequence of his actions. While we understand that many others share our pain, we ask that you channel your frustration in ways that will make a positive change. We need to work together to fix the system that allowed this to happen. Join with us in our campaign to ensure that every police officer working the streets in this country wears a body camera. We respectfully ask that you please keep your protests peaceful. Answering violence with violence is not the appropriate reaction. Let's just make noise. Let's not just make noise. Let's make a difference." So again, you know, the family deeply disappointed by this, as they stated here. You know, they have been calling for an indictment of Darren Wilson since the shooting of their son. And so, again, we were told that they would be making a statement at Greater St. Mark's Family Church tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I have not been told any different as of now, but again, they are very disappointed. Back to you.
Okay, Christina, thanks very much. Let's check in once again with Sheriff Watson here. And Sheriff, as you watch the scenes from Ferguson, what's going through your mind as you see the tear gas deployed once again?
Well, I see the crowd dispersing, and it appears that things are settling down now with the crowd being dispersed.
And peaceful protesters, and there were many of them, I assume, there were 1,000 people out there at one point who wanted to protest peacefully. Then there were some that tried to destroy this police cruiser. And police, I'm asking you, they must just say everybody's got to go. Even if you were being peaceful, they have to clear, and those people lose the opportunity to voice their concerns.
Not necessarily. If they can go into the crowd and pick those people out. Now, sometimes you can't control the situation. It's just too much, and that's why they had to deploy the tear gas.
Let's go live to Casey, who is live in Clayton, right outside of the Justice Center. Case.
Hey guys, first let me tell you, it's very quiet here right now. There are literally no protesters to be seen in an area here where they have gathered in the past just outside the Justice Center. In fact, in just the past couple of minutes, we've seen police officers with some of their riot gear in their hands, just kind of walking away as if maybe they're going home for the night. We're not sure. We have a little bit of video. I believe we can show you what the scene was like just a little bit ago. We did see one person at least arrested here just outside the Justice Center. When the announcement came out, it was a pretty subdued reaction. A couple of people were vocal initially there, and then one gentleman It looked like he may have been throwing rocks against the St. Louis County Administrative Building here. The police stepped in very quickly. He was arrested. We have not been given any official word on what he may have been charged with or why he was detained, but it looked as if he was throwing something at the county building. But again, a very subdued reaction from folks who had gathered. A couple of hundred folks had gathered. They were watching this announcement, a lot of them on their cell phones. And when the announcement came out, there were a few chants of hands up, don't shoot. But that did not last very long. We were able to, as you said, to catch up with one of the more vocal elected officials throughout this the past 3 months, Senator Jamila Nasheed. It's very quiet here in Clayton. There was a very mild reaction from the folks who were gathered here. Do you expect it to stay that way?
I'm very optimistic that we're going to have a peaceful night tonight. I don't think that you're going to have people out in the street, and they have every right to be out in the street if they feel that injustice has occurred. But they don't have the right to destroy property and burn down businesses and go looting. So that's the message that I'm sending tonight. And I also want to send my condolences out to Michael Brown family, and my heart goes out to him. The justice that they were seeking was not here tonight.
What are your plans for tonight? Are you going to be out and active this evening?
Yeah, I'm going to be moving around. I'm heading over to Ferguson now, and hopefully I can help keep the peace.
So a lot of the businesses, as we've been reporting throughout the night here in the business district of downtown Clayton, had boarded up, hoping for the best while preparing perhaps for something worse. We did speak to some of them, including as far back as last week, who said just that they hoped that this was all over preparation on their part and that they would not need the boards they were putting up on their windows. Right now, it looks like that is the case. From our vantage point, we have not been able to see any sort of gathering, much less any sort of violence or damage of any kind here in Clayton. So guys, right now, very quiet. We heard a couple of calls go out. We heard a couple of sirens and police cars, fire trucks at one time, but as far as we can tell, those were for just regular calls for service here in the city of Clayton. Mike and Ann.
All right, Casey, thank you so much. A couple of things. St. Louis public schools have canceled school tomorrow. Also, many of our reporters, including in and around the Ferguson Police Department area, they have been pulled out because of reports of shots fired by St. Louis County Police. So we want to make sure we're keeping them safe first and foremost as we continue to look at these shots, the shots of the scene right outside of the police department. Protesters have started to gather in St. Louis's Shaw neighborhood as well, where Vonderett Myers was shot and killed by an off-duty police officer in October.
Police say Myers fired 3 rounds at the officer. But let's go live now to News Channel 5's Mike Rush for the latest developments there. Mike.
Mike and Ann, this is an ever-moving scene over here. We're on Grand between right near Arsenal, in between Shaw and Arsenal. What this group has done is they began marching from Shaw down Grand Avenue to Arsenal. It looks like they went back the other way, and then they came back, and now I'm going to step out of the way, and you can see that they are down the way past Arsenal. It appears that they've stopped in that location there. We don't exactly know what's going on, but they have quieted down a bit. I will tell you also that this group grew really quickly. When we were at the scene where Vonderett Myers was shot, there were about 16 people that were standing around listening to Prosecutor McCullough's news conference regarding the lack of charges against Officer Wilson. Now there are hundreds of people down the road over here. They were marching loudly but peacefully from what we could see. We also want to draw your attention to the first black sedan that you see in the line there. The Chief of Police, Sam Dotson, is inside that sedan. We saw him when he drove by, and so he is on the ready. We just heard a noise in the background over there, and we see some people running that way. We're going to go investigate to see what's going on with that, but let's go ahead and hear from one of the people that I spoke to right after it was announced that Darren Wilson would not face charges.
Some say it's not a race thing, some say it is, but the fact of the matter is different groups of people get treated differently and different situations look totally different.
Okay, back here now live on Grand Avenue, you can see that this very large group of protesters is moving back towards me, heading, I guess this would be northbound, heading from Arsenal, going back to Shaw. If their pattern is holding true, that's what they've been doing, walking back and forth. The presence of the police is large, and it appears that what they're doing is they're keeping a tight perimeter at the beginning and at the end. They're not preventing the people who are coming to me now, they're not preventing them from moving freely in the streets, but they are keeping a close perimeter. That's a look at the protesters now. We will gather some more information and be back to you shortly.
Bob McCullough gave a CD to our crews, and Kay Quinn was there, and it looks like we have a fire.
That's a St. Louis County police car.
And it may be the same one that was busted into and rocked by protesters originally. So we'll continue to monitor that scene. It looks pretty clear, though, as we widen out from the helicopter. You don't see any people around anymore. We had 1,000 people there about an hour and a half ago. A couple other cruisers, but other than that, a vehicle just burning. We understand, we've had reports from St. Louis County Police that D batteries have been thrown at police. There have been multiple reports of shots fired as well, but most of this crowd seems to have dispersed after the use of smoke and tear gas tonight.
We saw this car a little earlier. We believe it's the same car that had its windows smashed. We saw some protesters on top of the car. Then a whole bunch of them tried to tip the car over, and then the police dispersed that crowd. But somehow this St. Louis County police car is on fire in Ferguson. This after the decision about an hour and a half ago that Bob McCullough announced that there would be no indictment for Officer Darren Wilson in the August shooting of Michael Brown. Our Blaine Alexander has been covering this, and she has been in Ferguson all day. Blaine?
Well, Mike and Ann, you remember when you spoke with me earlier, I was actually on Canfield Drive. That's where I was. That's where I was assigned for most of the evening. But just before that announcement came at about 8 p.m., we were suddenly told by our security that we needed to move over to the command center for our safety. We received, members of our crew received threats that were credible enough for us to move out of there and move back here. So I wanted to give you that just to give you some detail and some context of just how things were in that area. Now, before that, as I mentioned to you, the crowd on Canfield Drive was relatively small, but they were quite adamant. It was a number of residents in the area, one of whom told me that she was in fact fearing the worst if Officer Wilson was not indicted. But I also spoke with a couple of other people who came from neighboring apartment complexes over to kind of express their feelings. I spoke with one person who said that they received an email from their landlord. She actually sent me that email. The landlord simply said, stay inside, visit friends if you can, keep your kids safe, and just pray that this whole thing goes down peacefully. Now, we do know that there were about 3 or 4 protesters who were kind of walking around that memorial that we saw in the middle of the street. And he, for the better part of 3 hours, really was just adamantly saying, if Officer Wilson is not indicted, we will be loud, we will be angry, and we will be taking out our anger on anybody around. So again, that was kind of part of the threat that made our security crew say that for our safety, we needed to move out of that area and over here to the command center. Now, I want to help set the scene just a little bit of what we've seen here at the command center. Behind me right here is the area where law enforcement, we know, are meeting inside. Just since we've been here, we've seen a couple of National Guard vehicles go back and forth in this area behind me. We've also seen a number of police officer cars. But one thing to mention, it's a different setup than the command center that we saw over the summer back in August. Instead of seeing a lot of officer vehicles out here in plain view, we know that they're actually behind this building, rather out of sight this time. But again, we're going to keep monitoring, watching from right here, and let you know what we see from the command center. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Blaine. And we continue on the top right of your screen there to monitor this St. Louis County Patrol car that is on fire. We are going to go to Rennie Knott. He has been talking with St. Louis clergy tonight after the announcement. Rennie?
Hello, Ann. Yeah, we're at the Westside Missionary Baptist Church. I'm the only one here right now, as you can tell. Very quiet behind me, and it was very quiet at the time that the announcement was made. They had it on a live stream here inside the church, and once the announcement was given, everyone just sort of died down. There's a sense of disappointment. There was a couple of moans, and then right after that, it was time to rally the troops, so to speak, as they spoke about getting out into the streets and being positive and being nonviolent and making sure that their message was given to all the people out there that we need change, that there's an advancement that needs to be made in America, not just here in St. Louis, to make this a better place. And they say the best way to do that is the importance of communication.
I think the more we talk to one another and see one another face to face and engage in those really hard conversations, the more hope we'll see come out of this. I think, there are specific points, political points that we need to work for too, but I think neighbor to neighbor, person to person, family to family, it's going to be about engaging in the conversation and not letting it drop.
Lobby, there were tears, there were hugs. At the same time, there was a strength that together they will move forward, that together they will help bring St. Louis into one city and one place for peace. They plan to meet tomorrow morning at Shaw Park at 6:30 and then do more protests, peaceful protests at Keener Plaza around noon. Reporting live, I'm Rennie Knott. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Rennie, thanks very much. We continue to monitor the situation in Ferguson. We are also watching in the Shaw neighborhood. On the right side of your screen, you saw the St. Louis County police car on fire. It has been a little while since we have seen a group of protesters in Ferguson. We did see the deployment of tear gas, and it seemed to disperse the crowd. We've seen some protesters, but you see the large police presence, that police car on fire, and then otherwise it seems pretty quiet in Ferguson right now, and in the Shaw neighborhood the same, although those protesters were marching past our cameras just a few minutes ago.
And they've been going northbound into the Shaw neighborhood, and then they turn around and go back. We do understand that Chief Dotson is on the scene, so this is the first city scene we've seen within the city of St. Louis since the announcement at 8 o'clock tonight.
Let's bring in Kay Quinn, because Kay is just back from the County Justice Center, where she was there for the announcement of Bob McCullough. And just, I want to get your thoughts about the mood and what was going on in that room.
Well, I sat in that room from 3 o'clock this afternoon until that announcement was made about 8:15. And I can tell you, you've been in a courtroom. It's very quiet. They make the rules and we follow them. We were not allowed to tweet anything. We could be on Twitter, but we couldn't talk about where we were, what we were doing, what was going on in the room that we were in, what we saw on the way in. And if we haven't really taken our shot of Clayton from what I've seen, it was very quiet all afternoon and all evening long in Clayton, although many of the roads around the government center were closed. And from our vantage point on the third floor, we were in a courtroom where basically they do, preliminary hearings and misdemeanor trials and things like that, very run-of-the-mill courtroom. We could see down on the parking lot and the street right in front of the Justice Center, and there was no one. People, the only crowd that there was the media and the police. And really, that's how the entire afternoon and evening went. About 10 after 7, there were 3 local reporters in the room, including me. About 10 after 7, several other reporters started to come in. There were 48 seats in the courtroom we were in. I only counted 35 reporters. Everyone was very quiet, and we weren't allowed to tweet until it got closer to the announcement. So I could see as other reporters came in that they were tweeting, taking pictures and tweeting, which is when most of the rest of us joined in on doing that. I thought Bob McCullough was very calm and very self-assured as he made this statement tonight. He clearly thought out this statement very carefully and spelled it out in a way that he felt told the story of the past 3 months and what has gone on, very complimentary of the grand jury, and he doesn't have the answers to everything. Many of the questions he was asked, he said, it's impossible to answer these questions. These are things we need to talk about.
And just talk about the process of getting in as a reporter to this.
Well, we were really, it was by invitation only. And I do have to say that McCullough's office was very deferential to the local reporters. We were the pool cameras, and all the local reporters that requested, from what I understand, were pretty much given access. And then the national media was given access behind us. But, we were really given very little information in this period of time that we were waiting in the room. We saw Ed McGee, who was Bob McCullough's spokesperson, a couple of times. he had very little information and purposely told us he was cut off from the process that had gone on in terms of the grand jury and giving us any kind of information about whether we would be given, you know, the disc or the thumb drive with information on it. I mean, he was clearly purposely not being told things.
But you and I did have a text conversation shortly before the announcement, and you were given the indication that there would be a disc. And once we knew there was an indication there was a disc, we didn't go with it because we weren't sure. But once there was an indication there was a disc, we had to assume that there was no indictment.
Well, we didn't go with it because Ed McGee from Bob McCullough's office said, do not put this on Twitter. This is just for your information. But basically he told us that the prosecuting attorney would come in and read a 20-minute statement, that he would take questions and probably end with a statement, at which time we would be given a disc, one single disc, with a lot of the witness testimony and other evidence that was presented to the grand jury on it. He said that we would also be given access to a website where much more of the information is held. We were just given a little bit of what they wanted to release right away on the disc. But he told us, do not tweet this out because this is just for your information that we're telling you right now. So we did know maybe 45 minutes before the announcement was made, or an hour, that we were going to be getting that disc, which to us meant there would be no true bill.
Okay, we continue to look at the live picture of the St. Louis County police car on fire. It has been on fire for several minutes on West Florissant. Earlier, protesters were on top of it. They tried to tip it over. Those protesters were dispersed with tear gas, but that car continues to burn. This is a St. Louis County police car. And Kay, I guess the big question is now is where is that disc?
Well, the disc is in the hands of our tech guys, our IT guys, and they're in the process of going through that information. You know, we're very concerned. We really want to be transparent with you, our viewers. We're very concerned about what kind of information is on that disc. We have a legal responsibility to make sure that what's on there is fair and what should be released. I was given assurances by the prosecuting attorney's office that they have crossed all the legal T's and dotted all the I's, and what they're releasing they legally can to us, although many names have been removed of witnesses and other information has been left out that they felt could not be released. So we're in the process right now of downloading the information on that disc, and we're also trying to get access to the website that the prosecuting attorney's office has made available to us, although we are having trouble accessing that website with our passcode. There was an indication when we were told that this is the way the information would be given to the media that we could expect to have trouble getting on that website. They thought maybe by 9 o'clock, but now it's 10 to 10, and we're still having trouble getting on there.
And to be clear, there will be no web access to the public on this site.
Now, that I'm not 100% sure of. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to let the public access the information, but for our purposes, we are being given access to the information through this secure website.
I was given the indication that there will actually be two websites, one that the public can access, and one that the media can access, and it will be more detailed, you know, so that we can sanitize this before we put it on the air.
Well, and we use that word sanitize. We want to make sure we're being responsible.
Yeah, do no harm is
correct,
what we're trying to
that's
do.
really what we're attempting to do here.
All right, Kay, thank you so much. Congressman Lacy Clay joins us. These pictures that we're watching, this car burning, we've had shots fired, we've had D batteries thrown at police. Not the best night so far. Congressman, your thoughts?
Very disturbing pictures coming from Ferguson. Very disappointing results from the state grand jury. From the beginning of this process, I had very little confidence that Michael Brown's family would receive justice from a state grand jury.
And why do you say that, Congressman?
Just the way the process went forward under Bob McCullough's office. Very abnormal the way this case was presented to the grand jury. It wasn't presented like other cases. If you listen to the legal experts around the country, they will tell you that this was not done in a way that cases are usually prosecuted.
So what would you have preferred? Differently? Yeah.
I would have preferred a trial, so that the public could have heard all of the facts. Instead, in this instance, the grand jury was the trial. And so the public and the grand jury proceedings are supposed to be secret, and the public had no idea of what was going on inside that room.
So if a trial, though, would mean he would have had to have been charged, so you think Bob
Sure.
McCullough should have charged him himself?
Sure, I think it was probable cause to charge. And so now I'm asking the community and the world, because the world is watching St. Louis, to let the Justice Department finish their investigation, finish their case. Let the evidence lead us to where it may. And perhaps there will be a trial from that evidence.
Let's talk about the Ferguson Commission, their report due next year.
Sure.
Do you think that will be helpful in repairing these issues and fixing things?
I would hope that the Ferguson Commission would start to dig down and address the huge racial divide in the St. Louis community. And it's time that we have that conversation of the disparities, of the economic and family wealth disparities, of the criminal justice system itself, and how you have a two-tiered criminal justice system in this state, in this community, and that we begin to bridge those racial divides in this community, and until we have that honest conversation, progress will not be made in this community.
The president said tonight that this is not just a Ferguson issue, that this is an American issue. Do you agree?
I certainly do agree with the president. I listened to his statement, and the president was spot on when it comes to the inequities that still persist in this country and in this community. And I would hope that the governor's Ferguson Commission would have a dialogue about the racial disparities that are so persistent in this community.
All right, so you're upset about the decision, you're upset about the way the prosecutor went about
I'm
this.
disappointed.
All right, so
not really upset, I'm disappointed. I mean, this is, most of the people in this community and in this room knew what the end results were going to be.
But so as you look at the scenes in Ferguson tonight, what do you want people to know? What do you want the citizens of Ferguson, of the St. Louis area to know as we move forward and try to get past this and try to fix the problems?
In particular, I want the Brown family to know that this case is not over, that you still have an investigation going on by the Justice Department. And Attorney General Holder has told me that it's going to be a very thorough case, and it's not concluded yet. And so I think.
Any timeline on that?
No, I don't have a timeline on it. I want a thorough investigation, and I want the facts to lead us to justice.
And Congressman, what are your thoughts on Rudy Giuliani and others have come out and said, when we talk about crime, when we talk about race, and we talk about black-on-black crime, and 93% of those crimes, fatal crimes, are committed by black men against black suspects. Why aren't we paying more attention to that issue? And there has been a lot of criticism about that. What would you say to those people?
I would say first, let's deal with this case. Let's deal with the case of a white police officer killing a black young man. And that's not okay. That's not all right. And I think it's a crime. And since Michael Brown has been killed, 2 other young black men have been killed in this community by St. Louis City Police. And so that's not okay. Police are supposed to serve and protect. And so when you have, I ask this community, both sides, the police community and the black community, to take a step back and to restrain ourselves from violence on both sides. Police can be violent also. And I certainly don't like the optics of what's going on in Ferguson tonight. That's not a pretty scene. Doesn't make our community look any better. We need to address it as a community, as one.
And are you hopeful that we will come out stronger on the other side, or has this divided our region even more and those scars will be deeper now?
We have to be genuine about wanting to resolve it. And you have seen it over the last 100 days like I have. And you've seen how the races in this community are at polar opposites when it comes to their opinions about crime, about interaction with police, even about peaceful protesters. We have to find some common ground here.
So how do you want us to move forward? What are the few steps that you would like us to take so we can get to this place where we're all working together?
I think, first of all, the community has to realize that there's a problem between the African American community and police departments. So that will require some oversight, some civilian review. That's a first step that we could take that could help improve race relations between police departments and the African American community. And so that would require a third party having oversight over these interactions between police and the black community. And secondly, we need to look at how we give the black community economic opportunities, how we attack the unemployment rates in the African American community, how we actually give people opportunities to support their families. That's where I want to start.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much for joining us here on News Channel 5. We'll return in just a moment.
You're watching News Channel 5, where the news